to Teen Book Talk Tuesday. It's been a while since we've had another Teen Book Talk Tuesday, so today I am just going to talk about this one book that I read during this last month that we were gone. And I'm just going to talk about this book today, and we're not going to talk about any others. I'm just going to go into this one, so it might not be as long, or it might be a little bit longer depending on how much we discuss, because I have quite a bit of notes to mention on this book. But I read The City of Brass. I did mention this book a while back in one of our previous videos because we had just gotten this trilogy into the library, and I was really excited about it because it really sounded like something that I would be interested in, so I went ahead and read the first book. So I'm going to tell you guys how it went. It was amazing. I really enjoyed this book. It's The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. And I'm going to give you a little recap on what this book is about. And I have a lot of notes I have typed up here, so I'm just going to kind of read off of my notes I have here because it's kind of hard to hold all of this in my memory, what I want to talk about, because I don't want to give anything away. I really don't want to give you guys any major spoilers or anything. So I'm just gonna kind of go over the main conflict, the main plot of the story, and I'll talk about the three kind of main characters and what I thought about the book overall. So The City of Brass is the first book of the Daevabad trilogy. Daevabad is the City of Brass. It's what that means. So it tells of the journey of Nari. Nari is our protagonist. She's our main character. She's a young con woman from Cairo, Egypt. She discovered her true heritage as the lone descendant of a ruling class of the super powerful beings called the Devas, which are also called the Jinn. Jinn is a word that humans gave the Devas. And if you think of jinn, yes, that means genies. Genies are kind of another name for the jinn, which is the creature that grants wishes. So Nari is pulled into this kind of power struggle over the city of Daevabad. There's a power struggle going on between different, these 6 different tribes of Devas, of jinn, that are in this world, in this trilogy. So Nari is the last descendant of a ruling class of the Devas, and I will mention what this ruling class is called that she is a descendant of. So in the book we learn that the Deva, which I already mentioned before, were split into 6 tribes by a human king called Suleiman. There are a lot of names that are hard to pronounce in this series, so forgive me if I pronounce things very wrong. So they were split into 6 different tribes so that they could fight each other and leave humans alone, because the Devas back then were too much into human lives. They were meddling in their lives and such, as the jinn would do, because they would grant wishes. So humans would wish for things, and things would go a little bit wrong, because if you know, in a lot of popular stories with the jinn and genies, you have to be careful for what you wish for, or things can just go terribly. So a lot of that was going on. And so a lot of these tribes were spread out in Africa, the Middle East. There's South Asia, I believe it mentioned in the book. Of course, Egypt, like we talked about. So Nari, she is the last remaining descendant of the Nahids, which were a very powerful ruling family of Devas, of jinn people. So the Nahids were actually the ones who enforced Suleiman's rules whenever he wanted to keep the jinn kind of away from the humans, deal with their own problems, stop meddling in human affairs. The Nahids were the ones to kind of police this. They were given some authority on this front. And so a lot of the Devas hated this. They did not like that they had to kind of watch out for humans. They didn't like that they had to change their lives for the better of humans. So the Ifrit were these Devas. This is what they were called. The Devas who hated the fact that they had to be split up are called the Ifrit. because they were cursed for eternity by Solomon. He cursed them because they would not listen to the rule of the Nahids. So they were cursed for eternity, and then they became evil jinn spirits who possessed people and such like that. So the Ifrits seek out to kill all of the Nahids, and except for a brother and sister, then the sister of the brother and sister is actually supposedly Nari's mother. So this is where her bloodline kind of came from. So let's go ahead and talk some more about Nari, our main character. So Nari is, I really like her. She's a very likable female character. She's tough, she's sly, she's smart. What we don't like about her, of course, is the fact that she is a con person. She is not very trustworthy. She actually doesn't believe in magic or anything. She supposedly is psychic. So she uses some fake psychic abilities that she has to make her way in society so that she can afford to live. So she cons people into believing her predictions, her fortunes that she tells, the way that she supposedly heals people of certain afflictions. She's not actually doing this. They believe that she is because she, will put on some airs. She will have fancy jewelry. She'll, set the mood to make it seem mystical and mysterious while she's giving her predictions and fortunes to make it more believable. So, so this is, we first meet Nari while she is conning a couple of guys, which kind of, starts the conflict a little bit because she's sort of a person who's kind of hiding from the authorities because she's this con person who is kind of notorious. So Nari's thrown into the conflict when she holds a czar. And a czar is a ceremony to drive jinn spirits out of possessed people. So when I mentioned a little bit earlier about the Ifrit, which are devas who were cursed for eternity. These are the creatures, the Ifrit are the creatures who possess people. And so she holds a czar to drive out one of these evil spirits of this girl named Basima. Basima is supposedly possessed, so she's going to have this czar, this ceremony to exorcise a demon from this young girl. So when she's doing this, she decides to maybe earn a little bit of extra money, so she throws in some extra singing in a different language. She has this strange language that she knows that she's not sure how she knows it. That's one thing about Nari, is that she is able to pick up languages very quickly, supernaturally so. And then another thing about her is that there's this weird language that she knows that she's been trying to figure out where it comes from her whole life. So if she ever heard somebody speaking this language, she'd try to figure out where they're from. So this is just one thing that she's just has dealt with, is this weird language she doesn't know about. So anyway, so she figures she's going to start singing in this weird language that she's known her whole life while she's doing this ceremony. And people start believing it. They think, wow, she's actually doing some magic here. What's this language she knows? It must be something only she knows because she's magical. So, but she's actually not magical. So she thinks. So while she's doing this, something kind of weird starts to happen. She's trying to, get a demon out of this girl, but when she's singing this language, she starts to hear a strange voice saying, "Who are you?" coming from Basima, who's possessed. So, she starts hearing this weird voice. Things just start getting really weird at this point. And so what happens is she accidentally summons an actual ancient jinn warrior spirit. So yes, Nari is magic. This language that she was singing and chanting in does actually cause a magical reaction. So when she was doing this, she summoned Dara, who is an ancient jinn warrior. Very dark, mysterious guy. And so when she does this, Dara reveals that she must be part Nahid, part Deva, because only someone with jinn blood can do something like this, summon him for one thing. So he reveals she must be a Nahid who's a family of Deva healers who were thought to have died 20 years ago when the final brother and sister were killed by the Ifrit, like I mentioned, the sister being Nari's mother, Manize. So that is a little bit more backstory on Nari's parents, or parent, her mother. So let me see, where was I here? Okay, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Dara, who is that ancient Jinn warrior who she accidentally summoned. Dara is this sly, kind of dark, mysterious, handsome character, Jinn warrior, I'm sorry, in this story. He's a little bit of a romantic interest for Nari, because he's attractive in the story, so she kind of starts to like him, and some things about him that she notices, you know, those little ways that he smiles and things like that, which, you know, kind of get thrown into a lot of stories like this. So yeah, you have a little bit of your romance there, a little bit of a love interest between Dara and Nari. I'm not going to give away too much, but that's just, you know, when you're reading the synopsis of the story, you figure, oh, they're probably going to have a love interest. So anyway, so he's dark, mysterious. He's got a tortured past, literally. He literally was tortured when he was a Jinn slave. So when you think of genies stuck in bottles who can only come out when someone rubs them and they grant 3 wishes, that's pretty much the situation that Dara was in. He was kind of being held as a slave Jinn, to do the bidding of the will, to do the bidding of a human against his will. It's out of his control. So he was his slave who was tortured. So, you know, this tortured past kind of gives him, we're sympathetic of him. It gives him a little bit of more character because he has such a bad past. So it kind of affects him, the way that he reacts in situations, the type of personality that he has. He's just this tough, kind of no-nonsense guy because he's been through so much. So Dara, you know, he's this old Deva warrior with a violent reputation for slaughtering whole cities, because he was a slave. So he was made to do these terrible things, and he was tortured after the Ifrit caught him and then, you know, sent him to slavery for more than 1,000 years, for, you know, slaughtering cities and things like that in the first place. So yes, he was very evil in the first place, but, you know, being tortured and being a slave kind of broke that out of him. So Dara's, you know, is a likable character, really, in the, you know, in the first part of the book. Some crazy things happen towards the end. I'm not going to give anything away, but yeah, it's a really good book. So here is a little bit on the Prince of Davabad. So Dara and Nari, they're on the run from the Ifrit that Nari kind of woken up when she was doing the Tsar with Seema. So they're still on the run from the evil Ifrit, and so they have to get to Davabad. So Dara is helping Nara flee to Davabad for them to only fall prey to the current ruling family of the Khatanis, who overthrew the Nahids, which is Nari's family. They overthrew the Nahids from the throne more than 1,000 years ago. So because of this, Dara and the Khatanis, they're enemies, because they overthrew the Nahids, who were given control over the 6 tribes. They were the ones who were making sure everything was going the way that Suleiman wanted it to happen, you know, and Dara was kind of all for that. The Khatanis overthrew that, so he's against the Khatanis. In particular, Prince Ali Zaid al-Khatani, Ali for short. Him and Dara are kind of against each other. So Ali's a prince of Davabad, an island covered in enchantments who's gotten mixed up with Shafit rebels. The Shafit are human and Jinn hybrid people. They're half Deva, half human. So, and they were mad, the Shafit rebels are mad about how they're being treated as second-class citizens. Now, Prince Ali, he takes sympathy on the Shafit, so he is actually in secret kind of funding this this goal that they have to stop being treated as less than. But Ali finds out that there actually might be buying weapons with this money instead of, you know, being used for education and for children and for orphanages and things like that. The money is being used to, you know, weaponize the Shafit resistance, basically. So Ali is kind of thrown into that mess. And so because he is a Shafit sympathizer, Nari starts to befriend Ali, because Nari herself has to be half Deva at least, because she's a descendant of the Nahids. So this kind of starts a bit of a friendship between her and Ali Zaid, and this makes Dara very jealous because he's starting to like Nari and she's befriending Ali. Not to mention the fact that Nari is supposed to marry Ali's brother, who is the other prince who is set to rule Daevabad, I'm sorry. Ali himself is actually, he's getting ready to become the leader of the army. He's going to be the chief, you know, the commander of the army is what I was trying to say, I'm sorry. So, so Nari befriends Ali, who's sympathetic to the Shafit, so we mentioned that. Also, Ali is he's a very religious, very spiritual guy. You know, he's trying to be charitable, he's trying to do some good for Daevabad, but it's just causing a lot of turmoil, a lot more conflict to happen. Like I said, I'm not going to give away too much. You will find out for yourself when you read it. So, yeah, I highly recommend giving this book a try. It is a trilogy. There are 2 more books in this trilogy. The second book is The Kingdom of Copper, and book 3 is The Empire of Gold. I'm going to read book 2 here shortly. I'm going to start reading that, and I will tell you guys what I thought about it. I might go into more in depth on book 2 if you're going to follow along. So, you know, my comments overall, I think that, you know, the book included a lot of important themes, you know, that come up in the world, such as equality between races, between the Jinn or the Devas, you know, it's the same thing, between them and the humans and the Shafit, which are half human, half Jinn people. You have political ideas that kind of go against each other. You have Ali, he sympathizes with the Shafit who are being treated as less than, you know. And so obviously his ideas are against some of his father's ideas, the king, who, you know, is kind of involved in some of this mistreatment of the Shafit people. You have self-growth and self-discovery through Nari, even through Ali. You know, Nari starts to learn who she really is, the powers that she has. You know, Ali, he gets braver, he, you know, starts to speak out about some things that are not right and things like that. And then of course, I always give credit to the author for the writing style, for the imagery that just is able to immerse us in this world. I feel like I'm looking through the eyes of Princess Jasmine in Disney's Aladdin. You know, I feel like I'm seeing Arabia, and I'm seeing all, you know, the fancy jewels and the vivid colors, you know, that kind of setting. You know, I picture a lot of gold and jewels, and, you know, it's the city of brass, so I picture it just made of brass and shining. So very magical, very vivid descriptions that the author gives. So it, you know, it doesn't leave too much of you to wonder. You know, she describes things so well. You know, the people, there are Jinn people who can shapeshift. They can change the color of their eyes. They can change the color of their hair, which is really cool. So the people themselves, the clothes, the places, just everything is just described so beautifully. And so that's what really kept me in this story. I was so into it. So yeah, so I highly recommend you giving the City of Brass a try. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put some comments or questions on the Facebook page whenever I go to post the YouTube link onto Facebook on the Boonville-Warrick County Public Library's Facebook page. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our videos. If you haven't subscribed already, feel free to hit some like buttons on YouTube as well, and our Facebook page. Get us some likes on there and just show us that you're following, show us that you're interested. If there's anything you'd like me to change as far as doing videos, if there's any books you would like me to talk about, please feel free to send us a message or comment on Facebook. So tune in next Tuesday for another Teen Book Talk Tuesday. Might find a few books to mention, maybe do a short story or a poem or something like that. So stay tuned.